I had a full-time job, I had a full-time hobby, I had a full-time family at the house, and so that's really, when you talk about challenges and you talk about things that are going to slow you down, you really have to get on the same page with your spouse. You can't just run this solo life and expect that a marriage is going to be successful or a family is going to be successful. And so for periods of time, I would run, like I would run as if I didn't have a family, and that wasn't good. And we had to have many conversations about, hey, to keep us together, to keep us on the same page, we need to pivot and adjust a few things.
You're listening to the Big Ideas Podcast with Ashlee Andy. Tune in for honest conversations as we pursue bold dreams, redefine what is possible, and empower the next generation to live big. You'll hear stories that prove over and over again that just because something wasn't a part of our plan doesn't mean it won't be used for our good. Whether you're already an entrepreneur, you dream of becoming one, or you're raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. There's no time to waste on your big ideas. So let's get started. Here's your host, Ashlee Andy.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Big Ideas Podcast. This season has been so fun for me. I hope it's been as fun for y'all. But as you know, if you've been following along, this episode or this season has been all about just seeing the amazing plans that God has for our life and hearing stories and testimonies and just amazing lessons learned of when we trusted God with the unknown, with this like, whoa, where did that come from kind of surprise in our life, that his plan has been so much bigger and greater than ours could have been. And so I am like extra excited. And I know I always say like, I shouldn't say this is going to be my most favorite episode, but I can definitely say that for this one because I have my incredible husband, Andy, here with me today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, honestly, because I've been listening to all of your podcasts and, usually when I'm going to and from, the shops and different things, I always wake up early. I turn the podcast on and I listen to it and I'm always just as inspired. And so I know we've been trying to work this out for a while, but I'm glad to be here.
He was like, a couple weeks ago, he was like, hey, I feel like I really want to share like my story, like on your podcast. And I'm like, are you saying you finally want to be on the podcast? Because he's right. Talking like he hasn't been invited to the podcast.
Yeah.
So clearly there's nobody I think would be better to share their entrepreneurial journey. Obviously I've had a front row seat to like all the things because I'm a main character in this story too. So I'm so excited to kind of dig deep, give y'all maybe parts of the story that you've never heard before, of just where God kind of met us, specifically met Andy, like college, graduated, got married, dropped us in the middle of Georgia where we knew nobody, and then where just this whole entrepreneur journey just kind of started from.
Yeah.
And like I said, we'll dig deep in some of the parts along the way. So why don't you just kind of paint us a picture of, we had just graduated from college in Daytona Beach, Florida. We just moved to Georgia. Again, just kind of on a wish and a prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely had confirmation that God said, you're moving to Atlanta.
Yeah.
But we knew nobody. We knew besides like where you were going to be working and where I was going to be working, we were just kind of chasing that corporate career path, fresh out of college, 6-figure college loan debt. Mm-hmm. And just kind of paint that picture, like where were we at? What were we looking for? Did we even know what we were looking for?
Yeah.
Just kind of drop us right there in that story.
Well, you know what? Maybe I can rewind just a little bit and not too much of the past, but I think painting this picture is going to help our audience understand, like, you don't need to be perfect to become an entrepreneur, number one, but you don't need to be perfect to fulfill God's plan. Like
Absolutely.
Big time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think, the ducks have to be in a row before you do anything in your life. And that's so not true. And so maybe some of this testimony or this story that I can share will help our audience kind of understand that and inspire them a little bit. But when I grew up, I came from a household of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My dad's an entrepreneur. My mom has always worked a job, so I've kind of seen both sides of working a job. What does a job provide? What does a job not provide? And then I've also experienced like my dad, who was an entrepreneur. He still is today, and he had ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of what being an entrepreneur really looks like. And so it was interesting because I always grew up, and my dad really tried to steer me away from being an entrepreneur. Like he always kind of steered me towards whatever could be secure in your life, go for that. And that was always something deep down inside of me. Like I always kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit that was like, no, I want to create something on my own. I want to do something on my own. I don't want to personally, I don't want to answer to somebody. I want to be able to kind of like make my own calls and make my own shots. But I ended up going down the career path. I wanted to be an engineer. And I mean, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be in the engineering field. And so
Well, that stuff kind of came naturally to you. I mean, you won like
creating
science
did.
fairs and
Yes,
solar powered
that's
things,
right.
and
Yeah.
your garage as a kid was like your
Yeah,
garage as an adult. Like
it
it's just
was, I
like
was,
the mad
yeah.
scientist lab of ideas.
I had a really successful guy tell me one time, if you look into an entrepreneur's garage, looking at a garage will tell you how entrepreneurial the person is.
I've
And
never heard that.
so
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
good, the messier the garage, the better,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So that
that's
was my
100%.
excuse to never clean a garage. But no, it's always like constant little projects, here and there. And so anyway, the long and short of it, I had a lot of things come against me as I even tried to get into the engineering field. Yeah, I studied, I had to study very hard in school. I wasn't a test taker. I wasn't book smart really, but I've always been a thinker. I've always been the type of person who can, you've maybe heard of the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. But I was always that type of person. When I, kind of like sustain thought, I can expand that and come up with good ideas and all that. But I wasn't ever a good test taker. So my SAT scores were, I think they were 870 the second time, and they were like 860 the third time. They were never good. So when I got into the engineering program, there was only one school that accepted me, and the dean of the engineering department said to me, "You're really wasting your time here." I'm like, "Why am I wasting my time here?" And they were like, "You, just based on your SAT scores, you're going to struggle through this entire program, and you're not going to make it, and we don't want to see you not make it in the engineering field." But
Which is always the best advice to
that's
give
always the best
somebody
advice. Yeah,
who's a winner and who's going to be like,
yeah,
just because you told me I couldn't,
right.
wha-
Yeah.
now you can just watch me. So maybe that was like literally the best advice
It was
you could have been
literally
given.
God saying, number
Yeah.
one, there's only one school I'm going to accept you into the
Right.
engineering program on, because all the others said, no, you can come to the school, but you're not coming in for engineering.
Yeah.
But there was only one, that was Embry-Riddle, and they accepted me in, and you're right. And I needed to, sometimes God tells you what you need to hear in those moments where you're like, I need confirmation. And that confirmation to me wasn't, hey, this is the only school that accepted me into the program, but it was like I was also challenged. And so yeah, you're right. He like, hit that chord where I was like, yeah, we're gonna finish this program. We're gonna do great with this program because you said I couldn't. And anyway, so I went through the whole college program. And
Met me.
I met my wife. Yep, I met Ashlee in speech class, and that's a cool,
Yeah,
an
totally. I
amazing
wasn't
story.
trying to make
Yeah,
that part of the story.
yeah, side
But that is
story.
where we met.
Yeah, very cool story,
Yeah.
nonetheless. Yeah, she was in none of my engineering
No,
programs. Yeah,
we had to have speech together though.
that's correct. And so we ended up, I graduated. I only got accepted into one position, one job position. And so that job brought me to Atlanta. And we've always been firm believers, sometimes when you're so stubborn, sometimes you need doors closed to see a door open. And so we saw there was only one door open. So obviously every other door that we thought was open was closed. There wasn't anything that we could do
We were
there.
like, are you sure, God? Because this sounds really comfortable here. Could we
Right.
stay here? Could we do this? I think maybe we should give God one more chance to open one more
Right.
door. And it was like,
That's right.
oh my gosh, moved to Atlanta already.
Yep.
Hey friend, I wanted to take a quick pause to ask if you've taken the quiz yet to find out what type of dreamer are you. It's super important to discover what's working for you, but also some things that may be keeping you from really pursuing your greatest purpose. It takes just 2 minutes to find out if you're the skimboarder, the sunbather, the sandcastle builder, or the surfer babe. So jump over to dreamerquiz.com and be sure to share your results and tag me in it. Now back to the show.
Okay, so we moved to Atlanta and I got into, what I thought was my dream job, the job that, that secure job that my dad had kind of promoted when I was a kid. And as I grew up, like, hey, just get a job with benefits and security and all that stuff. Well, I mean, in today's real world, job security isn't even a topic of conversation. Like, how many times do you change jobs or careers in your life? Do you remember?
7 times you change completely different paths, not even jobs, like in a different field, 7 different fields over your lifetime.
Over your lifetime.
And that was over a decade ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so it's not even
dramatic
it's
now.
even more dramatic now. Yeah. So it's not common to really kind of plant your feet and be like, hey, this is where I'm going to be the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so as I was in engineering for about it was about the first 2 weeks where I was excited about the new job. Finally, I'm making money. I wasn't making a lot of money, but I was making money. And so, I mean, that was kind of like, this is where I'm going to be forever. It was kind of like my thought process. And I, after 2 weeks, I said to myself, I feel like I'm trapped. Like, I feel like this isn't what I'm called to do, and it doesn't feel like this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so I really started getting very, I had a lot of discontent with being in the job. Even though I loved engineering, I absolutely loved engineering. I just didn't like sitting in a cube with recycled air, sitting next to the same, team of 4 people, all day. And I'm thinking, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my life, right here. And with very little room for creativity and advancement and, all this stuff. And so anyway, fast forward just a little bit. So with that discontentness that was really in my spirit and in my heart, I really started kind of going down the track of what can I do to start my own business or run my own thing or get myself out of this job that I fought, so hard to get. Now that I got it, I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore.
But how many times do we go back and we're like, gosh, how thankful are we that it only took, like you said, 2 weeks?
2 weeks. Yeah.
I mean, 2 weeks, maybe a month, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember moving here and I had just, my job, long story short, kind of kept continuing. I was already working because I graduated a semester before you, but both of us, it didn't take us long to realize we had just gotten married, just moved to Georgia, just starting that like newlywed life, and we were spending the majority of our days away from each other. We'd come home and give each other like our leftovers and like, should we find a hobby to do now? Like, what do adults do? What do young married couples do when our jobs had nothing to do with each other? It's not that I didn't care what you were doing. I just didn't understand anything you were doing.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of already going down 2 different paths. And so I think there was discontent, but there was also like, we had enough of a glimmer of like, this isn't long-term going to get us where we want to go. Like, not even just career-wise, but like marriage, relationship, like family plans, like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
And I'm still like, to this day, I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful it only took us 2 weeks to kind of realize we got to do something different.
Yeah.
And really you more so than me. I was happier to be just content and make it work. And I tell you all the time, I'm so thankful that you kind of hoisted us out of a life of comfort and familiarity and, quote unquote security. And you were like, no, we've got to do something different.
Well, and I think as people are listening to this podcast, people, again, I kind of keep talking about sometimes God's going to open a door or close doors, to give you that inspiration that you need. And after 2 weeks, basically 2 weeks, that's what it took to get my first paycheck.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and that was a huge inspiration for me, where I'm like, okay, well, this is now, okay, what are we working with? How can I use this? How can we budget this? Student loans were just kicking in and house payments. We just moved into a house. We didn't have kids yet, but we were brand new married and just trying to figure this thing out. And so, when you take a small paycheck and you're like, okay, how do I divide this out and make this work in our family? I realized there wasn't much left over. And after 2 weeks of that, I'm like, actually, there's nothing left over. And
Like we have to do something.
we actually
different.
have to do something different.
And we were both working, to be clear, we were both working in career fields that our college degrees helped us earn.
Yeah.
Like to the world, we had the tiger by the tail, to use like an old, like we had made it.
Yeah.
Because when we were both in the aviation industry and it was post 9/11.
Yeah.
And so that whole industry was kind of spinning around on its head still. Like there wasn't a lot of job openings, much less job security. And the fact that we both got hired pretty much immediately after graduating in that field, in our fields, with salaried positions, and to still not take that long to realize like, this is not what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Not only financially, but it wasn't what we thought it was going to be from, the fulfillment standpoint, sometimes you hear that saying, you want to do what you love, and I loved engineering, but I didn't want to do it this way.
Yeah.
So there was definitely no fulfillment in my life, after about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But so we ended up I started going down this path of, I want to try to start figuring out some things that I can do almost like a side hustle. And today, a side hustle, it's like, what do you mean you don't have a side hustle? Everyone has a side hustle of some kind today. Usually multiple. And which is crazy because they have that just to, get by today. Well, I always wanted to have something more than just a side hustle. And I wanted to have something that could propel us into our future, as far as not just financially, but peace and fulfillment in what it was that we were doing and everything. And so, as an entrepreneur, it's never really what it is that you're doing to be an entrepreneur as much as it is, feeling the success and the reward and the fight, so to speak, that you have to have in you to succeed. And so I definitely will say, being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's not easy as a married couple. It's not easy when you have kids. It's not easy when you don't have kids. There's never a right time. There's never a right moment. There's never enough money. There's never, there's all these things that go along with being an entrepreneur, and a lot of those things can turn into excuses and turn into things that, literally talk you out of something that's deep down within your spirit that you want to do or succeed or have a part to play in. And so, I just wanted to, as these things really started, coming to my mind, like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, but what if it's, I lose my job? What if there's no security? What if I can't make enough money to, keep the water on, pay the power bill, whatever. And I really started, questioning if this was going to be the path that I really wanted to go down.
Yeah.
And so
why don't we fast forward to we're moving to Peachtree City. Your job had taken us there.
Yes.
And so you're commuting at that point because we didn't live in Peachtree City yet. So you're commuting like an hour, and you'd come home and be like, babe, there's this cutest town next, like this weekend, I'm going to drive you to Peachtree City and you're going to see this town and it's so cute and they've got golf carts everywhere. And sure enough, we drove over here, fell in love. I was pregnant with Owen at the time. And so we knew we wanted to be in like a family friendly town, city, wherever, great schools. Like we were kind of, our mindsets were kind of shifting from like, we're just a young couple that can like live anywhere to like, this is going to matter for like our children.
Yes.
And so we fell in love with the town. We moved to Peachtree City. You're still working corporate. I was no longer working, and
we had replaced your income already.
Yep.
With a marketing company.
Yep.
And absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like pursuing that, thinking I could keep that going even with kids at home, or at least with one. And yeah, and so the golf cart business just kind of came out of nowhere. And to your point, that you were saying earlier, it doesn't really matter what to use the word vehicle, it doesn't really matter what your business vehicle is as an entrepreneur. It just matters, like you were saying, you want something that's going to help you reach your goals, find that inner fight, that inner, success mindset, whatever is going to pull out that piece of you that's going to matter, and your vehicle is going to change over time. I mean, we're a perfect example of that. But whatever that starting line is of like, this is my business, this is my, my thing, this is my, widget that I'm selling, or, this content, or, this service, whatever the business is, it's going to change. And if it doesn't, you're going to go out of business. And so just as a warning, like, you have to be willing to shift and pivot and all of that as industry shifts. But, kind of pick up the story from, we picked everything up. We moved to Peachtree City. You're commuting back and forth to work. We wanted to feel like natives. So we bought our first golf cart just for our personal use. So we're cruising around town. And for those of y'all listening that are not local, Google Peachtree City. It's just the funnest town. It's
pretty much the coolest town.
Yeah. It's like 100 miles plus of golf cart paths.
We rent golf carts for your experience. So come on in and you can rent a golf cart and experience Peachtree City.
Shameless plug.
Shout out.
But yeah, so, we say all the time, like, how'd you guys get into golf carts? Well, we didn't get into golf carts. We got into looking for something that could fuel the next portion of our life, our next big dreams. And there was this piece of you from your childhood, of the engineering side of you, and just that, that adventurous spirit of, I want to create something that's going to be fun, and, I can design it. And it's needed. Like, is there an actual need in the world for this? And so kind of pick up the story from there.
Yeah. So when we bought our first golf cart, and I used it to commute back and forth to work, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. In our town, you don't have typically you don't have two cars. You have a golf cart and maybe one car. And so I would use my golf cart to go to work, and I ended up doing a lot of things to that golf cart, different performance packages and lighting and seating and paint jobs and custom roll cages and different things that I just started to have fun with, that creativity spirit inside of me.
The crazy garage stories,
right? And so I ended up, taking that golf cart, and the first person who saw my finished product was like, I want to buy that, and I'm like, well, it's not for sale. And he's like, no, anyway, name your price. Right. Yeah. And we sold our first golf cart, and I'm like, well, now I don't have a golf cart, and so I bought another one, and I'm like, well, all that cool stuff I did, I want to do again. And, but we did it different that time. We did different things and everything. So, but it really was a hobby, a passionate hobby that turned into a full-time career. And so, but in our town, golf carts work. If I'm 2 towns over, golf carts will not work, and so again, like we were saying, it's not the product, but in our town, it just so happened to be golf carts. But we always joke around, if we were in Hawaii, it would be an umbrella stand, right? So.
And one day we might move to Hawaii.
We might move to Hawaii and have an umbrella stand. So,
it's not off the table.
It's not off the table. Absolutely. You need to pivot and change with the times.
We just might have to pivot into Hawaii.
That's right. So we ended up, I had a full-time job. Now at this point I had been working, I don't know, in Peachtree City for about a year, I think, right around that time frame. And so I started buying and selling golf carts on the side. And I had done several different things before this, but this actually started gaining some traction, and I could see where, something that was passionate inside of me, other people started to see and appreciate that passion that I would put into.
People started calling you.
They started calling me.
More golf carts. This guy said you were the guy I should talk to, and
or I saw that golf cart that you built. I want one. And so a mentor of mine, Jeff Hathaway, he gave me some advice. He came down and he kind of looked at what I was doing, and he had said, you should really, he helped hone me in on something that I really needed a third, like a further perspective, a more macro perspective of what was happening, because I was so in the moment and, so micro focused on what it was that I was doing. I couldn't see like a bigger picture here. And so, I always encourage you to get a mentor, not just a friend. I mean, a friend's going to tell you what you want to hear, but a mentor is going to tell you what you need to hear. And so he would give me advice and give me, suggestions and inspiration and motivation that I needed that never felt good or sounded good at the time. But I knew if I followed that advice, it was only going to lead me down a more successful path. And so this hobby for basically an entire year straight, I would work full time. And this is really where push came to shove, because now Owen was born.
Dylan was born.
Dylan was already
I think
here.
Gavin was either on his way or he
pretty
is
pretty
just here.
close. So
Just,
now
yeah.
we had kids in the mix,
Yeah.
and I had a full-time job. I had a full-time hobby. I had a full-time family at the house, and so that's really, when you talk about challenges and you talk about things that are going to slow you down, you really have to get on the same page with your spouse. You can't just run this solo life and expect that a marriage is going to be successful or a family is going to be successful. And so, for periods of time, I would run, like I would run as if I didn't have a family, and that wasn't good. And we had to have many conversations about, hey, to keep us together, to keep us on the same page, we need to pivot and
see
adjust a
you.
few things, and so no, and we heard, we had some great conversations with some pastors and people that gave us advice and all that and guidance on how to really pull together. But it took the two of us sitting down and having these tough conversations, like, hey, I'm seeing a longer vision here, like a bigger dream that can be fulfilled, a way that I can get out of a job, or the way that we can have a retirement plan. But I need you to be on the same page with me. And, oftentimes if you have one person, whether it's your wife or a husband or whatever, it's not generally both people that have the same entrepreneur spirit. Like you and me are both very competitive, but I'm a little more of the I'll get caught in the business model, so to speak, but you want to see the security of that business.
Well, and I think also you can see the longer picture. Like you've got a much more long-term vision for what we're
Mhm.
working towards. Whereas I'm like, yeah, but I'm literally living the short. Like I have to have a short-term focus on
Yeah.
what we're doing, and so it works really well. But we didn't know how to work together at
Yeah.
first. So he'd be like, "But can't you see it, babe? It's gonna be great." And I'm like, "But right now, I need this." And so all the husbands and wives out there are like, amen.
Yep.
So you got to get together and realize, like, okay, let's tell me what you need short term, but please remember what we're working towards long term.
So, kind of talking about your point about husbands and wives and the decisions that you make as a family, I thought it was really important. I didn't want to go and fight really hard to create something big and then lose an entire family along the way. And so it took a lot of these conversations of like, hey, there's going to be commitments that I have to make, but if you can be on board with these decisions, there's going to be a little bit of short-term pain here, so to speak, but there's going to be a much better long-term result. And
you kept your word about that, which
Yeah.
helped me see, oh, I can see where we're going.
Yeah.
I can see where this is going to pay off long term. I'm willing to put in these short term inconveniences and, maybe not be like home for dinner every night or, helping me carpool or, whatever the pain point was. I mean, there was definitely a pretty long year and a half stretch where you were still working full time.
Right.
You'd leave the office, you'd jump in your truck, you'd go pick up carts in Augusta, hours away. You'd come back, you'd work on carts until 2, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You'd come home, get a quick nap, and you'd go right back and do it again. And that was like not for a week. That was for like a long time.
Yeah, it was a year.
And we had 3 under 3. And so there was a lot of feeling not feeling like a single parent because I was raised by a single parent, so it was not the same thing in any stretch, but there were moments where I'm like, gosh, I could feel sorry for myself right now, but I'm not going to because I know what he's working for because we just talked about it again.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Well, there were many moments where, we had that conversation when I would see you in the moment and like, just broken down, the days had beaten you up and the kids had beaten you up, like it was, and I'd come home to a mess, and you're crying, and the kids are crying, and I think even the dog was crying.
Dylan got spanked 18 times a day. He was such a bad toddler. He was so bad. He was so bad. We joke
he's
about
such a
it now.
good kid
he's
now.
He's like one of my favorite buds to hang out with now. So,
but there were moments to me where I'm like, you know what, this ain't worth it. This just isn't worth it. And I had to have that conversation with you, because we had this one, breaking point moment that kept me going, and it kept you going, where we basically had to have a come to Jesus moment and say, listen, if you're in, you need to be in. I had to have that conversation with you, but I said to you, if this is if this is how it's going to be, and it's going to be like you're out, then forget it. I'll throw the towel in. It's not worth it. I'm not gonna be destroyed over this.
Yeah, you literally said, if you don't want to do this anymore, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of like gave me the power of like, what are we doing next? And I was like, oh, okay, I want to keep doing this.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Well,
count me in.
You count me in. And
it was really like sobby, snotty conversation.
But, it was that conversation that we had to have to realize, like, what, we haven't even fulfilled the fullest potential of what we know we're capable of. But, we took a company from nothing. I started Big O's Golf Carts with like $2,000 in my checkbook, in
our garage, literally.
In my garage, which probably it took me, it probably took us 6 months to save up $2,000. I mean, we didn't make any money in our jobs. All the money was spent. And we went through a lot of struggles too. I mean, our water was shut off, our power was shut off. We had moments of no heat. We had, and so sometimes people forget that, there's always going to be a struggle before there's a victory.
Oh, yeah. Entrepreneurs are the best at romanticizing what the journey looks like. And I'm determined to show you that it's worth it, but not put on rose-colored glasses through the truth of it, so that when it happens to you, you don't think that you're all alone.
You're not alone.
We're all pushing through hard things because we know it's going to be worth it. But when you think that it's supposed to be rosy the whole time, you'll throw in the towel because you'll think there's something wrong with you. You'll think there's something wrong with your idea, or something that's completely not ever overcomable. And, it's just not true.
No, absolutely. And I have to share this. One of the times when the hot water or the propane or whatever was cut off, the natural gas, I was so mad at myself, for working a full-time job and trying to be an entrepreneur and all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? Who needs natural gas? Forget it. We're not getting another one. And so I'm like, forever, we're not going to get natural gas. And I'm like, well, how are we going to get hot water? And I literally created a solar-powered hot water heater on the, that I was trying to feed in it anyway. It didn't work. It was a disaster. I took cold showers for a week, and I said, what am I doing? What in the world am I doing? I think you showered at a gym. I think you were like, I ain't doing this.
Like, I love your solution mindset, but you're being just stubborn.
Yeah, there was some stubbornness there. So fast forward, and so again, we took something from nothing, we ended up creating a full retail golf cart company that continued to keep you home, but it brought me home as well. And so I was able to walk away from corporate America, which in 2013, and I had been working for about 10 years at that point, and 10 years in a corporate job that, you feel that security and that sense of, I didn't realize it was going to be so hard. I had been so excited to let a corporate job go for so long, with pictures and sayings on my wall and all this, motivation, flush your job and all this stuff. I was thinking it was going to be so easy to walk away from corporate America. But when the day came to, like, I had this choice, we were making a full-time income in our side hustle, and more than a full-time income. And I'd been doing this for a year, but something had to give. I couldn't keep doing the, work till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, 5 to 6 nights a week. I just wasn't going to keep working. And
we knew that wasn't the long-term plan.
Correct.
We knew
it was coming.
This is what we were working towards.
It was coming.
So.
Yeah. And so that day was a very special day to me, that I had, finally created something that produced enough that I could walk away from my personal job
Had the option, yeah.
and have that option. And so really, we took that and then we've just expanded it from there, and fast forward a little bit, we got to a point in our career or in our company where we were like, we call it the poolside conversation, where
we were in the pool floating.
We were in
on
the
floaties
pool floating,
on a Tuesday.
business was great on a Tuesday. Business was great. We were successful. We had made it, so to speak. We were essentially retired. And we felt this, this peace and this accomplishment for like what we had achieved. And we didn't have to go anywhere. We didn't have to do anything. We had created enough of a system that it was ongoing income at that point. And we were like ready to just like sail off into the sunset, small sunset in our backyard, in our pool, right? And but something inside of us just kept telling us like, this is not what you're called to do.
You're not done yet.
You're not done yet.
Yeah.
And so really the biggest challenge to date was about to hit us, and that challenge was going to be the next business venture. And so I had always dreamt of designing my own golf cart and coming up with my own golf cart that we could manufacture and have a US made golf cart that that would have all the things done to it that I'd always dreamt of having done to a golf cart, but I'd always just bought things and modified them and so on and so forth. And so, but it was that moment, we had read John Bevere's multiplication book, X, and in that book, the entire book talks about, pulling out what you're called to be and what you're called to do, and
how each of us have our own gifts, our own talents, and growing the kingdom and like reaching the lost and fulfilling the calling that we have on our life.
Well, and understanding that you never arrive
right
at a final destination.
Retirement is not biblical.
No, it's not.
No,
sitting by the pool floating is not biblical.
You are not serving anybody. And we certainly weren't setting a good example for our children of using our gifts, using our talents, serving others, glorifying God. We were thankful. We were, living in contentment. We were doing good.
Yeah.
Like we were doing good things. We weren't doing anything bad. We were passive at that point, and we were no longer hungry for using our gifts and our talents again to glorify God and to serve others in a way that stretched us. Like we were no longer stretching.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment we were both just kind of like, I think something is about, we've got to do something else.
Yeah.
And at about that time, we found out I was pregnant with our little bonus baby.
That's right.
And so in all the ways, God was rebirthing
a
whole new dream in us.
Yeah.
And, it's so interesting to look back on how God's plan unfolds because, like you were talking about when we started Big O's Golf Carts, we had 3 under 3, new parents, upside down. Like that wasn't, the ducks were definitely not in a row for that. We were not financially set to be investing in, business stuff, but here we were figuring it out as we go.
Yeah.
And then this next phase of it, we're like, oh, also let's start a completely new company in the manufacturing world, also with another newborn, which made 5, because also in that story, we adopted our daughter, which is a whole different podcast. But so now we have 5 young children, and let's go ahead and start another business now.
Right.
While you've got nothing else to think about, babe. Can you help me do this? Sure.
Yeah, let's do it
let's
again.
talk long term again. Let's do that.
And so, and again, I think what it really comes down to is, we had experienced a different form of what we call a golden handcuff. When you have a corporate job, we would call a corporate job like a golden handcuff. Like you make enough money to get by, but you make enough money almost to a point where it's not painful enough to want to do anything else. And so, when I got out of corporate America, it was like I broke those golden handcuffs, but I didn't realize that they actually existed in the business world either. You know, having your own business, it's almost like I got a new form of golden
It's
handcuffs,
new, like fake security.
fake
Yeah.
security,
Looks
you
good,
know?
smells good, but you're still kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, thank God for that, because the economy shifts, customers shift, business shifts, things pivot, things change. And like we were talking about in the beginning, like if you're not going to pivot and adjust, it doesn't matter what you're offering, selling, servicing, whatever it is, like there's always a level of change that you have to be willing to do to continue to grow, but even maintain, even though maintaining is really going
Growing,
backwards,
yeah.
so to speak, you know. But you know, so walking away from, you know, our retirement, so to speak, of having our own retail store that was self-sufficient and everything, and getting back into you know, a new business venture altogether, you know, it was like, let's do it all over again. But you know what? There is more peace about another business venture, not because the first one was successful. That's not what like really that didn't matter. What mattered was like we felt like, and I told you this back before we ever started the manufacturing company. Uh, I believe that yes, we are called to do certain things, and you know, God gives us a spirit inside of us that you know, He wants to see grow, and He wants to see big things happen, and He wants to see accomplished. And if you don't accomplish them, He's going to go find someone else to go accomplish it. You know, His plan isn't going to change just because your plan is staying stagnant. And so I literally, you know, thought to myself, like, if I don't move on this business idea or this concept, someone else is.
Yeah.
And so thank God that we did, because our economy did shift and pivot, and you know, and it was very, you know, without the next business, it's almost like, you know, we would have gone, you know, slid backwards 100% in the first business, you know. And so God has always opened up another door to help us walk through something even bigger, and a bigger plan that He has for us. And so anyway, now I just wanted to share a little bit of that, you know, that golden handcuff experience, because some of the listeners who might be listening to this right now, you know, golden handcuffs come in many shapes and sizes, you know. And so sometimes it takes, you know, getting that painful moment in your life where you're like, I just can't stay here doing this same thing anymore. You know, and it's that moment that God uses to help inspire you to go and be somebody better than you already are. And it was like when I was back at college and the professor said, you don't need to be in the engineering program. It's like, those were the words that my spirit needed to hear for me to want to do just that, you know. And you know, the corporate, so on and so forth. Like,
Yeah. Well, and I remember too, I mean, we were kind of like, well, you've always said you wanted to design your own golf cart. So it wasn't like this was out of the blue, but the timing was like, oh, are we sure we want to get uncomfortable again and put in this kind of work again? And we weren't ignorant or naive to the idea of what this was going to take.
Right.
But it was like, as soon as we said yes, all the right doors started opening. It was like our obedience is all God was looking for. He was like, you don't have to know how to do it all. You don't have to know what A to Z looks like right now. I just need you to say yes. And I'm gonna pave the way for you. You've been here before. You know, follow my faithfulness. You know, like, you're not the secret. I've given you gifts, but like, I'm the one that's gonna help this grow. So like, just take one step, and I'll show you where the next step is gonna be. You know, and I remember we were at an event, and Daniel Kalenda, great evangelist Daniel Kalenda, spoke, and he said, the opportunity of a lifetime must be seized within the lifetime of that opportunity.
That's right.
And which basically just like slapped us both. I mean, I think when he spoke that from stage, we both looked at each other and we were like, whoa, that was for us. Like, this opportunity has a limited lifetime. And if we don't say yes now, we are going to miss it. And we had such a feeling of urgency, like, oh, we got to go put these pieces, we got to go see how these pieces are going to come together. and yeah, I mean, the manufacturing company has just been an adventure all on its own. And it's so cool. And it takes all the same grit and heart and passion and vision, that any business requires. It's just it's a new vehicle, literally.
Yep.
And yeah. So we've talked about kind of like the timing of, in our early 20s, starting companies, and then, young family growing big as golf carts and, 5 kids down the road, another newborn, starting another company. I don't know, maybe pick up from there, or, kind of like closing thoughts, like bring this all home for maybe what would you tell the listeners who are like you had me at the golden handcuffs. Like, I feel like that could be me, or I just feel like there's so much going on right now. How in the world would I add something else that is so risky?
Man, and we could talk a long time about this, but I'm going to keep this short.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, if you are, if you are a Christian and you are a person who you pray to God every day, and you have a open heart and an open spirit to hear God and to listen to God, earlier on in our in our faith walk, in our Christianity, like it took God smacking both of us upside down the head to really like wake up and like, hey, this is where you're going to go. There's no other door open. But some people have a lot more options than that. Some people don't have options, in front of them. But if they have the spiritual eyes or ears, excuse me, to hear, and sometimes to see, but even not to see, but just to hear. These opportunities are given to everybody. It's not, we're no one special. But we did say to ourselves right before we started the manufacturing company, we said to ourselves, we almost feel like we're slapping God in the face, not doing the next business, because how many businesses get started and fail? Many of them. Yeah, many. We don't have to go over the stats and all this, but we felt almost like God has helped us through the business world, and we would just be like turning our back on him almost, not going to succeed in another company, or growing another company. So anyway, I hope that gives our listeners a little bit of inspiration that if you keep your spiritual ears open, you're being spoken to. It's just sometimes you're so clouded with all the false securities of your job or your whatever it is, your circumstances. Well, I've got a medical challenge, or I've got, we can go over stories of medical challenges, and victories, and well, you don't have kids, or you have kids, or you name it. But we decided that early on that we were going to get lockstep together, and we were going to take that, and we were going to succeed, and we were going to do it together as one. And so it really didn't matter what we were up against. We always knew that we were gonna be victorious over the situations and the circumstances. And it's hard to say that when you're going through stuff, but once you get through it and you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, God never trusts you with more until he knows he can trust you with a little. And so whether that's cleaning your car or doing a job that you don't feel like, you're getting paid enough to do, or you're getting paid too little, or whatever it is, you do that to your fullest. You do that job to the best of your ability. You treat your life with respect. And God will absolutely pour out a blessing that you can't even imagine.
Yeah. Well, that's a good wrap up. So good. Yeah. I mean, stewarding the smallest and just trusting for the next thing is, that's like our family code. Steward it well. Well, we could keep going, and I may have him back if he can fit us on his busy calendar for another conversation down the road. But not to be overly formal, but thanks for being here, babe. Thanks for being in our office together while our kids are upstairs.
It's been an honor.
Bribed to be quiet for an hour while we can talk.
But it worked.
It worked. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode. This season, like I said, has been just it's been so fruitful for me, and I just am prayerful that all the interviews that we've had and are still having are just impacting y'all in a way that that your ears and your heart need. And thank you so much for being here, babe. Thanks for just sharing the story. It always makes me like, I mean, obviously I know the story. I know the details of the story, but hearing it again always just makes me so thankful and so like just in awe of what God can do. And I just love that. I just love how you point it all back. So thank you all so much for joining us, like I said, and keep your big ideas coming. Your big ideas are welcome here. We actually don't really accept small ideas around here. But yeah, keep those big ideas coming, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much for being here. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in today. Before you go, it would mean the world to me and my family if you would share this episode with at least one person who you think might benefit from this message. And of course, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also follow me at Ashlee Ilg on Instagram to keep up with our adventures and for continued encouragement as you pursue your big ideas. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.